The Friday night rush at Marlowe's diner was in full swing. Orders shouted from the kitchen, clanged against the rhythmic hiss of the grill, while the hum of conversation blended with the occasional burst of laughter. Lena, 22, moved through the chaos with practiced grace. Her tray balanced perfectly, her steps light despite the crush of bodies in the narrow aisles. She'd been working here only 6 months, but already she was known for her efficiency and for never losing her cool. That reputation was about to be tested. At table 7 sat 3 men in their late 20s, already red-faced from too many beers. They were regulars, loud, crude, and tolerated only because they tipped well enough to keep the manager looking the other way. Tonight, their voices were sharper, their grins meaner. "Hey, sweetheart, the one in the middle," Dean called out as Lena passed. "You missed a spot on our table." "I'll be right back with your food," Lena said evenly, keeping her eyes on the ticket in her hand. Dean's friend Mark chuckled. "Nah, I think she should take care of something else first." Before Lena could react, Mark stood and grabbed the front of her blouse. The sound of tearing fabric cracked through the diner, silencing half the room. Gasps rose from nearby tables. Her blouse split at the seam, revealing the pale strap of her undershirt. Lena froze, not from fear, but from the sudden burning clarity of what was happening. Dean leaned forward with a leer. "Now she looks like she's ready for a show." The third man. Kyle snatched a mop bucket from a nearby cleaning cart, the water inside gray and foul, with grease and grime from the kitchen floor. Without warning, he tilted it, and the contents cascaded over her. The stench hit instantly. Filthy water soaked her hair, plastered her shirt to her skin, and dripped onto the checkered tiles at her feet. A few customers stood, outrage on their faces, but no one moved fast enough to stop it. The 3 men roared with laughter, the sound ugly and triumphant, and Lena didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, her breathing slow, her gaze locked on Dean. It wasn't a glare. It was something colder, quieter, and far more unsettling. Dean's laughter faltered for a fraction of a second before he forced it back. "Relax, sweetheart. Just a bit of fun." The manager appeared in the doorway to the kitchen, eyes darting between the mess and the men. "Lena, go get cleaned up," he said quickly, his tone dismissive, almost irritated at the disruption. He didn't say a word to the men at table 7. Lena turned without a word and walked toward the staff room, water dripping from her fingertips, her shoes squelching softly against the floor. Each step was measured, deliberate. Inside, she stripped off her ruined blouse, replaced it with a spare black shirt from her locker, and pulled her damp hair into a tight braid. As she stared at herself in the mirror, the hum of the diner muffled by the closed door. Her reflection showed no tears, only an unwavering, almost surgical focus. She had been humiliated in front of a full room. That debt would be paid in full before the night was over. When Lena stepped back into the diner, the atmosphere shifted, not because of her new black shirt or the fact that her hair no longer dripped dirty water, but because of the way she carried herself. The easy, polite smile she usually wore was gone. In its place was a calm so complete it made the air around her feel heavier. The 3 men at table 7 noticed immediately. Dean leaned back in his booth, flashing the same cocky grin he'd worn earlier, but his eyes tracked her every move. Mark's laughter quieted. Kyle picked at the label of his beer bottle without looking up. Lena went about her work without a single misstep. She delivered orders to other tables with her usual precision, her voice steady, her steps unhurried. But every so often, when the 3 men weren't expecting it, her gaze would find theirs. It wasn't a glare or a threat, just a brief, unblinking look that seemed to measure them in ways they didn't understand. Dean tried to break the tension with another crude comment when she passed. "Hey, sweetheart, you gonna thank us for the wash?" Lena stopped tray in hand and looked at him. You should finish your drinks. While they're still cold, she said quietly. No sarcasm, no bite. Just a flat statement that somehow made the space between them feel even smaller. A couple at a nearby table exchanged glances. The man leaned toward his wife and whispered, "She's not scared of them." Mark tried to laugh it off, but his voice caught halfway. "Man, she's acting like she's got something planned." Dean scoffed, but he shifted in his seat. "She's just playing tough. Watch, she'll keep her head down now." But Lena didn't keep her head down. She moved like someone taking mental notes, where they placed their hands, how much they'd had to drink, how their postures slouched more with each beer. She clocked the way Mark favored his left leg when he stood, and the slight tremor in Kyle's right hand when he gripped his glass. In between serving customers, she stepped into the kitchen to grab more plates. Benny, the line cook, glanced at her and muttered, "If you want me to say something to those clowns, I will." "No need," Lena replied, stacking the plates. "I'm handling it." By the time she returned to the floor, the three men had moved on to trying to provoke her with muttered jokes and exaggerated gestures meant to get a rise out of her. She gave them nothing, but there was one moment so fast most people missed it, when she placed a fresh basket of fries on a nearby table, and in the reflection of the chrome napkin dispenser, caught Dean watching her with something that wasn't quite confidence anymore. The dinner rush began to thin, and the crowd shifted toward the door. Lena noted the time. 2 more hours until closing. 2 more hours until they learned exactly who they had tried to humiliate. The diner's neon sign buzzed in the cool night air as the last of the dinner crowd trickled out. Inside, the clink of cutlery and chatter had been replaced by the hum of the soda machine and the occasional scrape of a chair against the tiled floor. Dean, Mark, and Kyle lingered at table 7, their empty beer bottles scattered across the tabletop. They'd stayed past the point of being welcome, tossing out half-hearted jokes to the passing staff, but their focus never left Lena. She cleared a booth nearby, stacking plates without glancing their way. Her movements were measured, unhurried, but there was a subtle rhythm to them, like someone working through the final steps of a plan. "Closing time soon," she said casually as she passed their table. "If you're sticking around, I'll need a hand moving something in the back." Dean's grin widened. "Oh yeah, what are we moving?" "Just a couple boxes," Lena said, her voice light. "It'll only take a minute." Mark smirked. "You hear that? She's finally warming up to us." Kyle chuckled under his breath, though his eyes were glassy. "Sure, why not?" She didn't wait for a response. She slipped into the kitchen through the swinging door and out the back exit into the alley. The narrow space was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb above the door. The air smelled faintly of rain and old asphalt. Inside, she heard the shuffle of chairs and the low murmur of their voices. Footsteps followed. Dean stepped into the alley first, his broad shoulders blocking the light from the kitchen. "So where's the—" He stopped. When he realized there were no boxes in sight, Mark and Kyle appeared behind him. "What's this?" Mark asked, a note of suspicion in his voice. Lena leaned casually against the wall, arms crossed. "You dumped a bucket of filthy water on me in front of a room full of people," she said evenly. "Ripped my shirt. Laughed about it. I told you earlier to finish your drinks while they were still cold." Dean's grin faltered. "So this is what some dramatic speech?" "No," she said, pushing off the wall. "This is me giving you one last chance to walk away." Mark laughed, but it was thin. "Or what?" The flickering bulb buzzed overhead. Lena took a single step forward, and for the first time all night, the calm in her eyes sharpened into something predatory. She didn't clench her fists or raise her voice. She just stood there, centered, balanced, like she'd been in this exact position 100 times before. Dean glanced at the narrowness of the alley, the lack of space to move. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, but pride pushed it aside. "We're not scared of you." Lena's lips curved into the faintest smile. "You should be." Dean took a step closer. Shoulders squared his boots scraping against the rough pavement. "You're all talk," he sneered, reaching out as if to grab her arm. He never made contact. Lena's right hand shot up, catching his wrist mid-air, twisting it sharply while stepping to the side. Dean's grunt of pain echoed off the brick walls. Before he could react, she pivoted, driving her elbow into his ribs with a dull thud that knocked the wind from him. He staggered back, clutching his side eyes wide with disbelief. Mark cursed and lunged forward, but Lena moved like water, slipping past his swing and hooking her foot behind his knee. His leg buckled, and as he dropped, she placed a firm palm against his chest and pushed. He hit the pavement hard, the sound of impact cutting through the alley. Kyle hesitated, glancing between his fallen friends and the calm figure standing before him. He charged anyway, swinging wildly. Lena sidestepped, catching his arm and using his own momentum to send him crashing into the wall. The thud reverberated and Kyle crumpled, groaning. Dean tried to rise, but Lena was already there. She planted a foot gently but firmly on his chest, leaning just enough to keep him pinned without crushing him. Her voice was level, almost quiet, but it carried in the stillness of the alley. "You thought it was funny to humiliate me in front of everyone. Now you've learned what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." Mark rolled onto his side, wincing. "What the hell? Are you?" She removed her foot from Dean and stepped back, giving them space to stand, if they dared. "Someone who's done letting people like you think they can get away with anything." Dean's face twisted between anger and fear. He opened his mouth to retort, but the words wouldn't come. The ache in his ribs and the sting of his pride sealed his silence. Lena looked at each of them in turn, her gaze steady. "You walk away now, and this ends here. You come near me again, and I won't be so gentle." The three of them exchanged uneasy glances. The bravado was gone. In its place was something raw and understanding they'd stepped into a fight they could never win. Slowly, they shuffled toward the diner's front lot, muttering under their breath, but never meeting her eyes again. Lena remained in the alley, the flickering bulb casting shifting shadows across her face. She didn't chase them. She didn't need to. The night was still, save for the distant hum of traffic, and in that silence, she knew they'd remember this far longer than the sting of her strikes. Lena re-entered the diner through the back door, the faint hum of the refrigerator, greeting her like an old friend. The kitchen staff glanced up, expecting her to look rattled or disheveled, but her braid was still tight, her shirt unwrinkled, and her breathing calm. "Everything good?" Benny, the line cook, asked with raised eyebrows. "They're leaving," she said simply, grabbing a towel to wipe her hands. Out front, the low murmur of customers shifted as Dean, Mark, and Kyle emerged from the side lot, moving slower than when they'd swaggered in. Dean's arm hung stiff at his side. Mark's limp was noticeable, and Kyle kept rubbing his shoulder as if trying to erase the memory of hitting the wall. They avoided every eye in the room, their earlier smugness completely gone. At their table, they fumbled to gather their jackets and tossed down some cash, not enough to cover their tab, but Lena didn't bother pointing it out. The manager started to speak, but one glance from her silenced him. As they headed for the door, a young couple sitting by the window watched them go. The woman leaned in to her date. "Those are the guys who—" "Yeah," he whispered back. "Not so tough now." The bell above the door jingled as the three slipped into the night. Lena finished wiping the counter, feeling the eyes of the room on her. Some were curious, some quietly impressed, but none dared to ask what had happened in the alley. That was fine with her. Mystery was a better deterrent than bragging ever could be. She poured herself a glass of water. The coolness, a welcome contrast to the heat of adrenaline, still humming under her skin. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. She had acted exactly as she intended, enough force to send a message, not enough to ruin lives. That was the balance she always kept. By the time the last customer left and the neon sign outside flickered off, the diner was silent again, Lena stepped out into the cool night, locking the door behind her. The street was empty, except for the distant glow of headlights turning a corner. She walked toward her apartment, the echo of her footsteps, a steady rhythm on the pavement. Somewhere behind her, in a cramped apartment, or a quiet car ride home, 3 men were nursing sore bodies and wounded egos, and she knew they wouldn't come back. Humiliation is a weapon bullies wield because they believe their target is powerless. But power isn't always loud. It's often silent, measured, and patient. Lena understood that rushing into a fight fueled by anger would only escalate chaos. By waiting, observing, and striking at the right moment, she took back control without losing herself in rage. In life, people will cross lines, test boundaries, and mistake kindness for weakness. The strongest response isn't always the loudest punch or the sharpest words. It's the ability to act decisively when the moment calls for it. Lena's restraint made her victory lasting. She didn't need an audience to validate it. The change in her bully's eyes was enough. Respect born from fear isn't ideal. But for those who refuse to learn otherwise, it becomes the only language they understand. And once you speak it fluently, it rarely needs repeating.